moment that you brought us to this place. We are asking you, King of Kings, in the mighty name of Jesus Christ, that you be with each and every one of us, that whatever we are going to learn and discuss in this place will be of help and guidance to us as we'll be going to our various communities. Be with us, gracious God. Open our minds and our ears so that we are able to understand everything that will be said. In the mighty name of Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen. Amen.
In the village, light the fire. Hand in hand, we build the dream. Every heart, every smile holds the key to what we see. Tien and Amoti, Amoti in the tumba la chisoni and we rise. Together we thrive. In the village, light the fire. Hand in hand, we build the dream. Every heart, every smile holds the key to what we see. Tien and Amoti, Amoti in the tumba la chisoni and we rise. Together we thrive. In the village, light the fire. Hand in hand, we build the dream. Every heart, every smile holds the key to what we see. Tien and Mamoti, Mamoti Ndituma Lachi Soni, and we rise. Together we fly. In the village, light the fire. Hand in hand, we build the dream. Every heart, every smile holds the key to what we see. Tien and Mamoti, Mamoti Ndituma Lachi Soni, and we rise. Together we fly. In the village, light the fire. Hand in hand, we build the dream. Every heart, every smile holds the key to what we see. Tien and Mamoti, Mamoti Ndituma Lachi Soni, and we rise. Together we fly. In the village, light the fire. Hand in hand, we build the dream. Every heart, every smile holds the key to what we see. Tien and Mamoti, Mamoti Ndituma Lachi Soni, and we rise. Together we fly.
So we stipulated that the form that is passing through, if you ensure that you write on all the
In the village,
name,
light the fire.
there is an allowance of 200
Hand in hand, we build the dream. Every heart, every smile holds the key to what we see. Tien and Mamoti, Mamoti Ndituma Lachi Soni, and we rise. Hand in hand, we build the dream.
Okay.
Every heart, every
Guys, don't sit down.
smile holds the key to what we see. Tien and Mamoti. Mamoti Bituma. Together we thrive. In the village, light the fire. Hand in hand, we build the dream. Every heart, every smile holds the key to what we see. Tien and Mamoti. Mamoti Ndituma la Chisoni and we rise.
Okay.
Together we thrive.
Okay. Come on. Disconnect all. Set the thing that's missing. Katika school community.
In the village, light the fire. Hand in hand, we build the dream. Every heart, every smile holds the key to what we see. Tien and Mamoti. Mamoti Ndituma la Chisoni and we rise. Together we thrive.
Na baba nitatumfiri.
In the village, light the fire. Hand in hand, we build the dream. Every heart, every smile holds the key to what we see. Tien and Mamoti. Mamoti Ndituma la Chisoni and we rise. Together we thrive.
Respect other people's, everyone's opinion. Right? Leave out mistakes.
In the village,
We are here at this time.
light the
So,
fire. Hand in hand, we build the dream. Every heart, every smile holds the key to what we see. Tien and Mamoti. Mamoti Ndituma la Chisoni and we rise. Light the fire. Hand in hand, we build the dream. Every heart, every smile holds the key to what we see.
Mwaka bwanji bonse zinanga ndine chanda chongo from Alliance for Community Action.
In the village, light the fire. Hand in hand, we build the dream. Every heart, every smile holds the key to what we see. Tien and Mamoti. Mamoti Ndituma la Chisoni and we rise. Together we thrive.
All right, thank you so much. We'll get into the introduction and just briefly explain why we are here. So, the Alliance for Community Action is a civil society organization based in the South, like mentioned, and the organization pursues public resource management and accountability. And one of the areas of operation for the organization is advocating for transparency and accountable management of public resources and services. Done in various ways, including providing the platform to facilitate informed interaction between citizens and duty bearers. SCA has embarked on advocacy on constitutional reform in Zambia by proactively raising awareness among citizens and the local leaders to discuss how the constitution can be useful for improved service delivery. This will ensure that citizens, especially youth, who understand the importance and need to participate in constitutional reform matters and in an informed manner at the time when the process begins. To begin the conversation, like you've seen, we have different people coming from different places within our district, and I will be able to introduce them. We have Chico Kalonga, who is coming from the Water Constituency, Chico University. Round of applause for Chico. Secondly, we also have Joshua Musolo, who is a youth enthusiast, somebody who is interested in youth development, who is also an environmental activist, not forgetting the fact that he's also a community journalist. A round of applause for Joshua. Stephen Nyambe is third on our list and is also coming from Kabwe district. A round of applause for him. Chomba is also one person that's coming from within the district, and we also have a different area to discuss on. A round of applause for Chomba. Last but not least, the only female on the panel, Michelle Miller, who is a youth activist. A round of applause for Michelle. Now, to begin the conversation, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and it outlines the structure of government, the distribution of powers among the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary to prevent one branch from gaining too much power, and the rights of citizens entrenched in the Bill of Rights that guarantees specific freedoms and protection of citizens, such as freedom of speech, religion, and assembly. The Constitution often includes provision of their own amendment, allowing the changes of areas of the Constitution Amendment Act No. 2 of the year 2016, namely the dominance of the executive and separation of powers, the mixed member proportional representation, the electoral system, and also the expansion and definition of public office under Article 263 of the Constitution. That is major reforms. To begin the conversation, I will go to the audience, just so we could understand what is happening when we talk about the separation of powers.
the executive gets to appoint judges and other officials of the judiciary. I feel even though there is separation of power, there is no separation of power.
I saw a hand on the other side. What's your take on the separation of power? How is the situation like with regards to the separation of power? Yes.
I think it talks about the legislature, executive, and judiciary on how these guys are supposed to make separately. The judiciary is supposed to check on the checks and balances on the other organizations, and the legislature is checking on the other executives as well, other organizations.
All right, thank you so much. Do we still have other people from the audience that want to make comment? Yes.
The executive has more power than these other two because of their politicians, because they control the other guys.
All right, let's turn to our panel and I'll allow Machiko to come to you. How is the situation of balancing of power when it comes to the three organs of the government?
Okay.
I'll first start by defining what. I'll start by defining what executive dominance is. So, this is when the executive exerts dominance over Parliament by choosing the direction of its program or legislation and using its majority to often pass its bills to Parliament. So, while the Zambian Constitution ascribes to the doctrine of separation of powers, which ensures that government power is divided among the three arms of the government, which is the legislature, judiciary, and the executive. You find that in Zambia, the executive dominates both the other arms, while the president heads the executive, which is created under Article 113 of the Constitution. You will find that the president is also part of the parliament. The National Assembly becomes parliament when the president and the members of the National Assembly are sitting. And you find that in as much as it is the duty of the legislature to create laws, the same legislature, by virtue of the acts of parliament enacted to give powers to ministers to make subsidiary laws, such as subsidiary instruments. And you find that the ministers are the ones that tend to bring new bills, propose changes to old laws through Parliament.
All right, there was a comment, I think, 2 or 3 from the audience where we had people talk about the unequal distribution of powers, and they cited the executive being one that gets to abuse the structure. Is it something that is happening in our country, and how is the situation?
Definitely. The executive is above all other 2 arms of government.
Could you cite examples so as to...
Like, I'll give you an example of where you have cabinet ministers sitting in parliament, coming up with bills and promoting government policies. In other instances, you have members of parliament that belong to the ruling party that also sit in parliament and they push for government policies.
We get a comment from the panel, maybe with regards to the unequal distribution coming from the executive.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. So when you are looking, when you are trying to look at the separation of powers in Zambia, you have got the executive, the legislature, which is supposed to provide checks and balances. So the question that we can ask is, if members of the cabinet are also part of parliament or the legislature, then how sure can we be that these people can provide checks and balances to the executive? And again, you find that the president, in my view, I think, he has got a lot of powers which affects the separation of powers. You find that the president has got the powers to appoint the judges, And these are the people that are supposed to interpret the law. This is a situation where we end up when we find that maybe a president gives office. Other cases that were maybe ruled in the favor of that person gets to be revisited. So if we can end up with a situation where we find that maybe judges especially are not appointed by the president because there is a lot of political interference, especially on those few examples that I've just cited.
Could there be any other comment from the audience, from the panel before we get back to the audience? All right, we're still talking about the three organs of the government, and perhaps there could be a question or a contribution from the audience before we get to proceed to another point. All right, you can go ahead.
So, at least there are many institutions like the Anti-Corruption Commission. Those guys are appointed by the president, the board is appointed by the president. So, if you can find a way of those guys being independent, not politically motivated, being appointed by the people, can be right.
You wanted to add something?
Yeah, I think he's talking about proposals for limiting the executive power. You have a few ideas here. I'll talk about prohibiting improper interference with the fair administration of justice, thus deterring the abuse of the pardon power, prohibiting political abuse of security, clearance process, ensuring the State House staff save the public.
All right, let's now move to representation when it comes to legislation, right? And we'll look at the issue of women, and also let's focus on groups like persons with disabilities, not forgetting the children. Do we see representation when it comes to parliament issues and key decision-making platforms? Do we see these groups being identified and also having meaningful contribution when it comes to such decisions? And I will dive into you, Joshua.
Okay, thank you so much. Maybe before we dive into the conversation, I would want to... I stand? I should stand? Yes. Yes. I was thinking you're going to do me a favor by saying so. So who am I not to stand? So let me stand. Yeah. Before we get to maybe that conversation, let me maybe provide context. How many people here are between the age of 18 to 35? Almost everyone. So let us look at our parliament. We are going to look at the gender distribution. We also maybe try and look at age distribution. So in parliament, we only have 5 members who are between the age of 30 to 35. You get that right? Yes. And again, we only have 26 women representing the entire women in Zambia. So when you are looking at representation in parliament, we find that our parliament doesn't have a diversity of people. It doesn't have a representation of our population. So here, we are trying to propose a new electoral system that is going to work for you and also me and for our country, by ensuring that at the end of the day, the members of parliament get to be a reflection of our aspiration and our needs. So we are going to talk about the mixed member proportional representation. So what this is going to do? Is going to allow you, when you are voting, to have 2 votes. One, you are going to vote for a member of parliament, and you are going to vote for a political party of your choice that is going to appeal to you. I think maybe for now I can end it.
All right, you've actually stated that the young people are in the majority when it comes to our population. Let me go back to the audience. Why do we see a less representation of youths in parliament, and why do we see less representation of the women in parliament? What will be the problem with the current electoral system? I'll begin with you, then move to the other side. maybe a certain gender. So interpretation yama laws na hii inaleta sana constitution. Ile tunaona ni sasa Edison sana kwa hiyo. Right.
Just to confirm what he's saying, I think the standards that are set for a person to qualify, maybe to contest for a position in parliament, I think they do not meet the standards of young people. You find that even though there are standards that are set to say you have to pay such a certain amount maybe to start a political party or all that, you find that a young person is not able to attain that kind of amount. Also, there are positions that have been set that a person should possess home. The age is the standard. I think young people most of the times are sidelines in those positions and do not have a space where they can penetrate.
All right, another contribution.
I have not to say, like, they have kept to themselves. The constitution have not publicly displayed, only understand it by themselves. So they need to show us, they need to tell us. Like you said, newspaper, they need to show us what the law is all about. So we don't kept to themselves. That's the reason why we don't even participate in politics. That's the reason why we're not in parliament. That's the reason why we don't even know what's happening. Because they are kept to themselves.
Joshua, you wanted to...
No, I just wanted to add something to what my colleague said there regarding so one of the barriers that I can probably think of are resources. Most young people and women don't have the resources for them to contest in maybe any elections. Most of the resources are owned by, say, maybe older men. So that's the reason why you will find that in parliament, majority of the people that are there are men. Women and youths don't have that enough resources for them to be able to contest on a fair ground with other people that have got such resources. So I think that's why there's a that disparity when it comes to representation in parliament.
All right, so just in addition to whatever that they've actually stated, I would also like to say it's also very important that we should be having youth representation in parliament, as well as, just to promote that inclusivity when it comes to the marginalized citizens. Because when we have people from different walks of life coming in parliament, it's going to be very easy for them to air out their views, for them to voice out, because they're actually going through that thing, they're able to experience it, they're able to feel it. But if somebody just from the top is in parliament, let's say just these big people, they won't be able to fully understand what the youths on the ground are actually facing. So I feel it's very important that inclusivity should actually be promoted.
Joshua, you are on your way trying to propose a new electoral system. How will this affect youth engagement in political spaces, and how will it affect also the fact that there will be engagement at the end of the day when it comes to key decision-making situations?
So this proposed electoral system, this is how it can, I think, help the young people to have representation in parliament. For the fact that even after 60 years, the majority of the population here in Zambia, it is us young people. And when you look at parliament today, you find that we are represented by people who are 65, 75, 50 something. I think that is a narrative that we can change through this system. So what this system is going to do is this. It's going to provide you, when you go into a booth to vote, you are going to have two votes. One, you are going to vote for a member of parliament of your choice, and now you are going to vote for that particular political party that is speaking directly to you by having a list of members of parliament that they are going to propose to get from a share that is going to be added to the seats in parliament. So let's say, for example, we have got 156 members of parliament, and this new system is going to propose maybe to add 44 more. So if you voted maybe for candidate A wins maybe Kabwe Central, and you voted for maybe FDD as a political party, because FDD had listed 5 young people, and they had listed also 5 people that are living with disabilities, They had also listed maybe 25 women. So if FDD gets 50% of the overall of what that is cast, they are going to get 55% of the 44 seats of parliament. This is a new electoral system that has been used in Germany, New Zealand, and when you look at parliament of these countries that I've just mentioned, you are going to find that these are parliaments that have got a balanced representation of the population. You find youths are there, you find women are there. Just like my colleague had said, you can't have old people deciding on your behalf on how much you can earn as a minimum wage. Those people don't care about you and me because they've already achieved it. But if you send a young person like you who is sitting there, you are already feeling the pain of not having. You've already had that experience of going to school and not having school fees. So when you go there, you are likely to ensure that when resources of Zambia are being distributed, you are going to ensure that they reach those people who happen to be in the same shoes as you were when you were in school. I think that is what I can say.
Maybe even before we get other comments from the panel, do you think political parties then will be compelled to ensure that they have young people on board?
So this is it. If me and the audience that is sitting there, we identify ourselves more as Zambians, as good citizens before political lines, tribal lines, ethnic lines, and everything. Political parties are going to know to say the majority of the voters are the young people, and if on our list we put young people are likely to vote for us. And this is how it is working in other countries. The majority of our population are women. So why should women go and vote for men who are listed on the political party that is prioritizing men? And there is other political parties that are prioritizing women to be represented in parliament.
All right, let's get comments from the panel and get back to the audience.
Just what you say, what if you view an example of the last election, that's the 2021 election, look at the PF. They had young aspiring candidates, namely Jay Bada and Honorable Munia Zulu. Those guys were left out on nominations based on the fact that they're young. They had to stand as independent candidates and they went ahead and won. So, political parties won't go for anyone young.
Right, are there any other comments from?
He has actually said my point, but I'll just phrase it this way. So it's also important that we have to consider an elder's blessings. That is how the saying goes. So in as much as we're talking about youth representation in parliament, one thing that we're supposed to put into consideration is that we also need youths who are very passionate. Not just because you're youth, then you go up there and say, okay, fine, I would love to be in parliament. No, it comes from the heart. It comes from deep down. What kind of passion do you have wanting to be in parliament, wanting to represent your fellow youth? So I also think it's very, very important that in as much as we might have or will have youth representation in parliament, we shouldn't forget our elders' blessings by also getting some different ideas from people who have already already been in ruling, so that at least they guide us in that area.
All right. Do we have comments, questions, or contributions from the audience? All right. Now, Joshua, I want to get back to you on this one last point. Let's look at what is in for that young person who's not part of that political circle when it comes to the proposed electoral system.
So I'm hoping that the audience have gotten maybe a few ideas, or maybe I would even have loved maybe them even share what they know about the mixed member proportional representation. And I'm disappointed that young people have decided to keep quiet, which is not supposed to be the case. I hope that they can have something to say on this. So what is it that is there for a young person who is not going to stand? You know, this system is a bit complex, so it is going to require civic engagement like we are doing right now. We are not just discussing this component, but we are also discussing maybe media freedoms, constitutional reforms and everything, and at the end of the day, we are going to have a citizenry who is more engaged and more aware of what they are supposed to do. And political parties are not going to compete based on who is more famous, but I'm sure maybe they are going to compete on who is having a list that is going to appeal more to the people that are going to be voting, which is going to be, I'm sure, young people in women. So maybe through that way, I see even those who are not going to contest, they are going to be aware in that way. And also, you are going to have a representation, because I wouldn't want old people to continue deciding on my behalf on how much should be allocated maybe to health, how much should be allocated towards building infrastructure, building more universities. I would want to see young people and a diverse, like she's saying, we are not saying that old people are useless now, they shouldn't be part of the discussion. What we want is equal representation in parliament. Yeah.
All right, Stephen, let's build on the silence when it comes to the proposed electoral system that we've seen, and also the idea of having accessible and clear information when it comes to the electoral system. And I heard somebody build on the acts, the law not being clear, therefore not giving young people, the youth, enough chance to be able to participate through these processes. Is there clear and accessible information when it comes to electoral processes?
Okay, to begin with, I'll throw this question to the audience. What body regulates the electoral system in Zambia?
The body that regulates elections in Zambia.
This is the Examinations Council of Zambia or Electoral Commission of Zambia? Yes. Do you have an office right here in Kabwe? Do you have access to that information? You don't?
Yes.
You don't have access? Are you sure? You have access as youth? Okay. So to begin with, is that same information very clear to you? How to go about the whole electoral system? Yes.
The reason why I say that we go about this is we don't have access in the higher level. That's why in the parliament we have people who represent us as youths. That's why they brought about the role of democracy by voting. For them to get the views of we youths out here that we are also concluded in the parliament. So that's the reason why they brought about voting for the role. It's what they do and what they do.
Okay, so okay. Shima?
Yes, what is trying to explain is that every new what we call a democratic right, which is the voting right. But what we're talking about is what is the percentage of representation of youth in the parliament? And this body debate is all around constitutional reform. Hence, the moderator is asked a question to that one. Yes, you have the democratic right to vote, but what is the percentage of representation in parliament? Yes, that's all.
Okay, so for starters, access to that information. Yes, we can have it, and it's very clear according to how it has been presented in its records. But is it accessible to you as the youth? In my opinion, no, it's not really accessible.
Yes.
Because for starters, here in Kabwe, we don't have that office. And when elections are nearing, that's when we have these voter educators to come and teach us about all things regarding electoral systems. So to answer your question, it is quite clear, but we don't really have that access to that information.
All right. from the audience, those that have tried to access information on the electoral system, how clear is the information given out there? In terms of clarity, is it clear? Are we able to understand the information, or do we even have access to this information? From the audience, by show of hands, I would like somebody to make comments. Yes, you can come to. More comments from the audience?
Okay, information is very much clear. Now, the increase on James, I think it's much.
Just, okay, yeah, quite okay. Just add on what he said there. The information is clear, we've all got access, but due to the general public as citizens, with what people go through, we just don't put ourselves on it. But on what he said, that was right. This is it, when the people does, all we know is that, but then there are some votes once we vote. But at the end of the day, we don't even know what we're doing. All we know is we're just voting on that. Yeah.
All right, getting back to you, still talking about access and having clear information. Let's look at people that are unable to read and also understand the complex terms that are used in such platforms that get to provide such information. Do we have them left out, or could this be the reason why we don't have enough information and clear information with regards to the electoral system?
Yes, due to some socio-economic challenges, this can be one of the reasons as to why we do not have. Okay, you're quite right to live in a modern world, and I'm sure everybody here has access to a smart device, right? But are you able to access that information on your own? How many of us do that? So to still at the huh? You don't. So yeah, accessing it. Okay, quite here in Zambia, the literacy levels are quite high. If we're in a privilege, like we're able to read and write, but go there's free education, yes. Everybody's let's give it maybe 5 years. And everybody will be able to learn civic education, right? I'm sure you are all aware of that. So this gives the youths a basic understanding of the whole electoral system.
Could you get a comment from the panel?
Oh, okay. There's a hand there. Okay, yeah. So when we are talking about accessibility, like everyone else has said, the information is there, but it's just that maybe it's a little bit difficult to access it, and then understanding the whole electoral process is a little bit difficult because one, we don't have the resources, and then at times there are no people to explain clearly those things. You can even just tell from certain issues, maybe when it comes to the referendum, the one that we had last time. The issue that was there is that there was no clear explanation to most of the people, and the majority of the people don't know how to read and write. So if there are no people to explain such issues to them, that's why you find that there is low turnout and low understanding when it comes to the youths and everyone else in society to understand the whole electoral process.
All right, let's turn back to the audience.
Thank you very much. Access to information, we do have it. Now the problem is the information that we have access to. I don't know if it is out of cleverness or whatever. The information that we have has got a lot of lacunas and ambiguity in it. In that even basic things, we may be able to read, we have access to this information, we are able to read, but the interpretation of it is very different. I would read the same thing, me and the person sitting next to me, but the way these things have been phrased, you'll find that the interpretation will be different. I'll give an example. Even the issue of the eligibility that was there recently, it took the Concord You've seen, it took the Concord, and for the Concord to have made a ruling, some people were not even satisfied, even as it reached the Concord. Now imagine the Concord, it comprises of people that have studied, and they have got case studies where they would make comparisons for them to actually understand. So in other words, the youth, yes, we have access to this information, but this information is not clear. In that, part of the information is subjective. Whereas here in town, you interpret it in a way that it will not fit the people that are in Japan. It will not fit the people that are in Northwestern Province. And because of those things, you find that we will have this information. They will give us the Constitution. By the way, anyone can have access to the Constitution as it was earlier spoken. You can go to the Parliament page, and you can download the Constitution there, and you can download most of these things that we are talking about here. But then you find that even after you have downloaded it, when you begin to read through, you will not understand, because the terminologies that are used there, the case studies that are used there are things that you cannot relate to. So even as we are cooperating as youth in there, I would actually plead with everyone else of us to say, let us try, those that have understood, let us explain to our friends, and those that have not understood, let us also take time to ask so that we can be moving at the same place. Thank you.
As we still try to focus on understanding, Stephen, how does the understanding of these electoral systems affect, youth voter turnout and also political participation?
In that regard, because of lack of understanding, there's in turnout it brings about voter apathy, and a lot still stay in the dark. So what we really need is some amendments with regards to the Electoral Act. Like he has alluded to it, point of a lot of lacunas in those acts. This person interprets it in this way, the other interprets it in another way. But it's the same thing. So if we could just come up with some amendments with regards to the Electoral Act, then I think we can have a clear picture on how to go about it.
Right, let's move forward. Looking at the public officer under the Article 263 of the Constitution includes civil servants, and I want to engage you, Chomba Chomba, in this conversation. Are public officers accountable for the management of public resources?
Okay, so basically what I can say is that so I'll probably start by saying defining who a public officer is. This is someone that has been probably legally or elected, or someone that has been legally elected or appointed to perform certain government duties. And then accountability basically entails someone saying being accountable for being responsible for their actions and results in whatever they are doing. So when we look at public officers, are they being accountable to the resources that they are being given? I think we can both say in some instances yes, and then in some instances no, because there are certain instances where they are being accountable. I can give an example of say the way CDF is handled. You can say there's some accountability in the way it's handled, and then there are certain instances, especially for those public officers that are directly appointed by maybe say an executive. It's very difficult for anyone, or even law enforcers, to maybe say prosecute them when they've done something else. So it becomes a little bit challenging to make those people accountable for whatever they are doing. So it can be a yes and no answer.
Can we get comments from the audience? Yes, I'll engage you. And the females, are we part of this conversation?
With the issue of accountability, I still feel it leaves too much to be desired. Like he has explained, you will find that the people that are supposed to hold you accountable are the people that you appoint. And that is why we find that there is this, the FIC report that is released, the financial intelligence report. We find that this time, between now and The anti-corruption will not hold anyone accountable who's within the public service as at now. When we go to 2027, if there is a change of government, then you hear cases begin to mushroom. Why? Because now the person that is holding accountable, that is holding the other accountable, is no longer is not under the jurisdiction of the one that has been removed from that office. And because of those cases that we see now, to say, no, in 2009 this person, so they have only been held accountable because they are out of public office. So because of the first thing that we tackled on the separation of power, I feel the separation is not there enough that people would be held fully accountable while they are still in public offices. In other countries, you actually find out that there are people that would even retire on national interest because they are held accountable during their tenure of office, and if they are found wanting to protect their integrity, they'll resign. But that is not the case here in Zambia because you have to oppress everything. You sit on your activities. So accountability in general is not there in Zambia.
Right, let's get comments.
In as much as we are talking about accountability, these institutions like the Electoral Commission of Zambia and the Anti-Corruption Commission of Zambia holding to account these government officials or other people. But who holds these institutions to account? That's my question. I have a concern. I might not be aware, but I've never heard of young people or other citizens holding the Electoral Commission of Zambia to account, or the Anti-Corruption Commission of Zambia. Are we saying these people are not found in any cases where we as citizens of Zambia should hold these institutions accountable?
Could we get more comments from the audience? Female participation, can we get more comments from the audience? Right, let me throw it back to the panel.
Okay, so her question is basically saying who holds the people in offices accountable, or if the citizens are doing anything.
It should be who holds those institutions that hold other people accountable.
Oh, okay, so for accountability, it's both internal and external. By internal, it's within the government. They get to select, maybe I can talk about the Anti-Corruption Commission, the Auditor General's office. Those are the offices that are being mandated by government to hold certain other government officials accountable for their actions. And then the external part is where government is being, say, maybe held accountable by civil societies and individuals. So the accountability is there, but it's just that it's not basically not being enforced properly and clearly. You'd find that someone will be found wanting, but the people, like my colleague said, the people that are supposed to hold that person accountable have got some political inclination, so it's very difficult for that accountability to be enacted. But the accountability is there, and the officers are there that are supposed to hold people accountable. But the only challenge is that there are political inclination, and then as individuals, we don't take it to heart. Because there was a case, like maybe say the issue of the fire trucks, the fire tender issue. The people that actually took, the people that purchased those things to court were just individuals like us. But maybe the problem is that as individuals, we don't really have that interest and that information and knowledge to say you can actually report someone who has done something and hold them accountable. But we feel like, no, it's supposed to be left to maybe certain individuals or political players, or maybe say other organizations. But basically, the people that are supposed to hold people accountable are there, but it's just the enforcement that is basically not there.
Well, let me push in, Joshua.
So when you are talking about accountability, let us try and look at the Constitution. The Constitution starts with we, the people of Zambia, meaning you and me. We've agreed to say these are the things that we are supposed to follow. every public servant, and I mean civil servants, elected officials, including the president, the things that they are supposed to do should be within the Constitution. And this Constitution should be followed and checked by you and me. Are we ensuring that these people that are serving us are following the things that are in the Constitution? I think the answer is no. As young people, yes, we are the majority, but we focus so much, I think, on things that can't develop our nation. When you look at other countries, you find that it is actually young people who get to demand. When a minister is caught in a scandal, you don't need to wait for them to leave office. No. When a public servant has stolen money, you don't wait for them to say, they will be fired. It is actually young people who are supposed to demand, to say, no, we know the Constitution. You are not supposed to use our resources to enrich your family when people don't have medicines in the hospitals. But the interest is not there in us. We don't want to take part. And the moment we start taking part, that is when we are going to see these institutions are going to be accountable, because they will not say, okay, if we go this direction, we have got a citizen that is aware of what we are supposed to do. So it should start by you and me to move this nation forward and in the right direction.
So just I'll go back and talk about the executive. Let's look at this. Find that there are instances where the legislature may have a bit of power over the executive, where members of the executive are called to give explanation on certain policies. But nevertheless, as much as there are all these checks and balances, you find the executive will still dominate.
All right, getting back to you, John. The issue of accountability is one that is often coupled with transparency. Is there transparency in the allocation and utilization of public resources?
Okay, so looking at, say, transparency in the way public resources and transparency and accountability. Again, I can say yes and no. There is transparency, and then in certain instances, there is no transparency. So maybe when we look at the example that I cited for, maybe say the issue for how CTF is rolled out, there's transparency. The money is there, there's a budget, everyone is able to see what's happening, people are able to be, the community is engaged, and everyone else takes part. And then, so there you can say there's transparency. And mostly the issue with maybe say the Zambian context, the biggest challenge that we have when it comes to transparency is that there's mostly a time lag. I can give an example that I cited for the fire trucks. So the issue only came up later on. That's when we found out that they had bought all those the fire trucks at that amount. But the whole process was followed. There was transparency and everything. But people started complaining, no, why did they do this and this and this and this? So in most instances, the transparency is there, but the information, we are just not interested most of the times to look at what is there. And mostly they will just, maybe if they're the government is trying to do something, they will probably just put up a small thing, and then people mostly don't pay attention to what's basically happening. So that's where the problem is. There's no that interest amongst us as individuals to follow up on issues that are happening, and hence it looks as though there's no transparency. Because if there's an office, say, if at the end of the year, maybe say a year, the auditor general can audit someone. So that means there's transparency. Maybe there was some misappropriation, but the transparency basically was there. It's just that we are not interested.
Right, let's get, I'll start with you, Frida, and then move in that direction.
No, there's defamation of character. This person wants to stay to pay the money. And most young people are not reacting to that. I have a concern because Malasa government official, I don't know if that maybe can have it, or the constitution says that that person who was facing a defamation of character, it's really affecting me because we are diploma tax. But government in Amboka send just because government official someone pointed a gun at someone and they have to pay them. This is an issue that has really affected me because Zambia has that we have to pay. Then we turn again and start paying I think we should get interest in these issues. In fact, if there's that rule that says just because the government official insulted someone and the state is the one that is supposed to pay, let them be responsible for the crime that they are committing. That money is ours. And we need to clear our credit so we can have a better country. So here as far as let them just be open to us so that we can give them suggestions to stop getting our money and paying for someone's crime that they committed.
Maybe just to get it clear, Freedom, the way you see it, who's paying who on what basis?
There's a current issue where a lady says that she was defamed by a government official and she's demanding 2 million water from the state. In what capacity should the state now start paying for someone who is now a member of parliament just because they defamed someone? Why should the state be paid our money to that person who was defamed? Let the member of parliament or whosoever should be responsible for the crimes that they committed.
Alright, for the sake of clarity, let's just maybe bring in Victoria.
Okay, so I think what you're talking about is when, for example, someone is arrested by the police and then they are detained unlawfully and then they are found with no case to answer and then they sue the police and they demand payment, not the minister telling another minister and the state. So that one, yes, is problematic, but the police do that, and we've seen a lot of payouts to the amount of 900. Is it 900,000? Yes. So there are times when the police arrest, detain, they don't find you the case to answer, then you decide to sue them. So that is very problematic because yes, that is our mind.
Alright, we focus on utilization and allocation of resources. I will start with you and then move to the gentleman.
I'm going to take us back to the issue of accountability. So I feel like there's one area which we haven't tackled, which is punishment. So there's lack of proper punishment for people who are actually caught in the act of corruption. So if we can advocate for proper punishment for the people that are caught in those acts, to say they are properly punished, then for that reason we are going to see that these people or these officials are actually accountable.
I think with me, I've got a question which I'm going to ask you on transparency. Is there any transparency on the procurement of government properties? Or maybe talk about drugs. Has there been any transparency?
Alright, we can get 2 more comments and then we'll move back to our panel.
Thank you very much. Again, on the issue of transparency, that's why we are now, right? Something caught my attention. I'm an economics student, by the way. The government increased CGF to the communities. Now, the central bank does not disburse this money. So the central bank transfers that money to commercial banks. Now that money that was transferred to commercial banks, the community, like us who are here, I'm very sure if we were to ask each and everyone that is representing different communities here, you will tell us to say there are certain projects that you feel the CDF can work on to improve those projects and to improve the lifestyle of the youth that are here. Now, what has been happening, to bring to your attention, is that this money is in the commercial banks. Now the commercial banks are waiting for the community to ask for that money through the elected leaders so that the community can use that money. The community is not requesting for that money. So what does the commercial banks do? They get that money and buy treasury bills from the central bank. When they buy those treasury bills, when the treasury bills mature, the central bank gives back that money plus the interest to the commercial banks. You've seen that? That is what has been happening. You go on news, you read, and those are things that you will be given. It's not secret information. So now, transparency. How much time does the leader that we have elected take interest in finding out from us, the youth, to say what are the best ways that we can utilize the CDF that we've been given? There is very few community engagement as to ask the youth what we want to do with the money that we've been given as the CDF. And as a result, we find that a few individuals are making money from the same money that they are supposed to utilize. 26 million is given to the commercial bank so that the community can withdraw. The community is not withdrawing. That's 26 million. They said the commercial banks buy the treasury bills from the central bank. At the end, they are given back a 30 million. And you find that these things are happening. So there is no transparency in terms of resource allocation because most of us are not being engaged as to how we want that money to be used. And that thing gradually continues to happen.
All right, let's get two more comments from the audience. I'll start with you and end with you.
So, on the issue of accountability and transparency, it's not like as youths we don't have issues. One thing that we haven't been talking about is the fear that we have. I feel like as youths or rather citizens, we're given so much power to politicians in the sense that if a politician does something wrong, it's hard for me as a youth who's maybe looking for a job to speak out. Because I know the moment they go out there and start speaking ill about the government or pointing out few wrongs that the government is doing, basically they're not going to employ me at the end of the day. Then I don't have the resources to mobilize maybe my fellow youths. You know, it's easy for the government to it's easy for politicians to just give us something and keep us quiet. And keep quiet just like that. So I feel like on the aspect of fear, we've given so much power to these politicians. So it's hard for us to hold them accountable for the wrongs that they are doing.
I think a lot of things have been exhausted, but there is something that I want to maintain. If we are going to rely on the criteria of holding leaders to account after they're out of power, I think it's going to make accountability and transparency to be an illusion in someone's mind. But if we are going to take, if our government structure or maybe the community learn to hold people when they are still in position, when they are still in power, I think it is going to change the face of how we are going to look at everything. And again, if we are going to hold people after they are out of power, it is going to seem as though the current government is trying to bring revenge on the previous government. So I think accountability should be done while a person is still in power.
All right, getting back to Chonga, just to sum it up on this aspect, let's look at measures put in place to address corruption, mismanagement, and misuse.
So there are quite a number of measures that have been put in place to address the issue of corruption. So the first is the Anti-Corruption Commission, which basically looks at people that are performing any or doing any corrupt acts. And then there is also the Auditor General's Office, which also helps in maybe dealing with issues of mismanagement and misuse of public resources. So then the other thing that I can talk about that addresses these issues, I can say civil societies also are playing a big role in addressing the issue of corruption, and then even just the general public. Basically, they've done quite a number of things to just maybe help addressing the issue of corruption and mismanagement. But basically, it needs to draw down and come down to us as individuals and the general public to make sure that whenever you see, like that's why there's even that Whistleblowers Act, whenever you see someone doing something that is not right or correct or in line with what has been mandated, you need to report that person so that there isn't that mismanagement of resources. And then the other issue that we probably need to do is make sure that there is enforcement of the law. Because the challenge that we have right now is the laws are there, but the enactment isn't really there. And that's the biggest challenge that we've been facing. You find that the law is there, the Auditor General's report will be there, it will be reported. There was corruption, there was mismanagement, there was misappropriation. But the enactment, that is where the challenge is. And no wonder there has been a lot of suggestion in reviewing the Constitution and say that the challenge with enacting or maybe say prosecuting people that are doing corrupt acts, maybe say in government, the issue always comes down to the separation of power. Because if there is separation of power, if the chairperson for the Anti-Corruption Commission isn't appointed by the president, then they'll be able to follow up any individual, probably say that has done something, regardless of who appointed that person. If the Auditor General's report, say maybe reports that say some people misappropriated or misused certain funds, if the Auditor General wasn't appointed by the president, then they'll be able to follow up on those issues properly and clearly. But provided we have an instance where there isn't that separation of power, it will be very difficult to enact the laws that are already in place. So probably that's what I can say.
Is our comment from the panel? Alright, finally we talk about issues that have to do with media freedom. Now, from independence, our country has seen development which has included the increase, and we've also seen the death of private media in our country. Now, should the government regulate content, and to what extent should they justify the censorship?
Thank you very much for that question. So, should the government regulate the media content? So, my response to that question is yes. Why do I say so? Because there are quite a number of issues that actually arise when the government is not regulating the media content. By regulating, I mean it's more like setting some rules or laws, or rather monitoring the dissemination of information. So firstly, when the government regulates the media content, it's going to be easy to prevent the dissemination of misinformation. What do I mean when I say misinformation? Misinformation is actually false or rather misleading information with intent to harm another person or the next person. So the other point is when the government regulates the media content, this will also help to protect the vulnerable groups in society. We have people that cannot stand up for themselves. We have people that cannot speak out for themselves. So when we have seen that there is harmful content, I can talk of the internet. Let's say there's X, there's Facebook. So when there's that content on the internet, that is actually affecting them and they can't speak for themselves. It will affect them not just emotionally but also mentally. So it's very, very important that these regulations actually are put in place so as to protect the vulnerable groups as well as the children when it comes to harmful content, either on TV or on the internet. Then the other question you said, why is it important for that censorship to justify, to what extent to justify the censorship? So when we talk of censorship, we're talking about the government preventing the harmful information that can actually be disseminated to other people. So to what extent is that when there is misinformation, when there is media content that can actually incite violence, the government has to come in with that censorship in the sense that it has to prevent abuse on the next person. And also, in as much as that censorship is there, it also it does not have to infringe on an individual's rights, or rather just to attack a particular group.
Anyway, away from social media, let's have a focus on traditional media, for example, and let's bring in the aspect of freedom of expression. Do you think government censorship will sort of affect how people express themselves? Will it affect how people get to bring out information on corruption, accountability? Let's take a view in that now.
Okay, so we actually have, when we look at the freedom of information, so it actually has for and against answers. So for the advantages is that in as much as the public is waiting for the media to actually inform them on key issues that are actually happening on the ground. So now imagine where that information is not being availed to them. How are they going to have access to it? They won't, because not everyone has access to a smartphone. So if that information is not availed to them, it's going to be difficult even for them to know exactly what is happening on the ground. But the other disadvantage is that in as much as there is freedom of information, there are certain issues, or rather stories, the untold stories. I can talk of, we have investigative journalists. So for the investigative journalists, they talk about the untold stories. So there are some very, very sensitive stories that cannot be availed to the public only unless if they are fully investigated, and that's when that dissemination of information can take place. So the disadvantage now is that when a journalist avails that information to the public, which is the untold information, it's going to be misinterpreted by the public in so many different ways. And now looking at the advancement of things to do with the media, like in the media industry, we are looking at the introduction of Meta AI, we're looking at the introduction of ChatGPT. So it's like everyone wants to be a journalist on their own. It's like the first person that will actually avail that information to the public will have that, it's like they'll become a content creator on their own. So yeah, it has both advantages and disadvantages.
Let me throw in John back, then move to Joshua.
Okay, so basically when we talk about censorship and the government regulating speech and everything else, personally I'm not for the idea, because we've seen instances where the government tends to misuse such kind of censorship with the issue of, maybe I can cite an example of what happened to Prime TV, where they were actually closed because they had said something against the government of that day. So censorship, and who decides what's harmful to the next person, because we probably view the world in from different perspectives. So what might be offensive probably to me might be okay with you. So who decides exactly that this is wrong and this is not supposed to be said? So personally, I'm not for the idea of censorship. So I'll probably say censorship actually affects freedom of speech, and then whenever the government is given the power to start regulating, they tend to misuse that power for their own benefit. When someone says something that is against what they are standing for, they will say, no, this is not right, so let's regulate, let's close down this media house, and all that kind of issue. So personally, I'm not for the idea of censorship. I would love people to be as free as possible to express their views in any circumstance.
Let me bring in Joshua, and then we'll be able to get out to you.
I think in any effective democracy, we shouldn't even talk about government censorship. I can give an example. We lived in Zambia at one particular time when we couldn't trust government media, because whatever that was coming from government media was trying to protect the government. So if we give powers to the government, which I feel to some extent they still have, of regulating what the media houses can say, what they can report, what we need is a government that is able to provide a conducive environment where the media is able to report things as they are without being sugar-coated, whether it is going to affect the president, whether it is going to affect the ministers, whether it is going to affect the most powerful man in Zambia. That thing is reported the way it is. And again, what we need is a police service which is free from political interference. And again, what we need is a judiciary which is able to punish those who are those people who are maybe writing on other people's freedom of expression. So government censorship is not good, and I think if we are talking about improving our democracy, government censorship shouldn't even be part of our topic.
All right, let's just run back to the audience. I will be back to you, and getting able to engage you as well. Comments, contribution from the audience with regards to press freedom. Yeah.
Transparency, because we have seen cases but up to 2024, plan day after you have. So, but money advantage is their transparency. Not that they can commit a crime today, and very soon a freedom of Mulan Great Wadika, Nokunjira, Tabanjira. So, my question is, the place. Shidinsa Mushabati, much that what was when I social media to be my papers. What Insa Mushabita Suna Mulanda, Pagi, Amadis there.
Right, thank you so much. Let's get another comment before the film. Yes.
So, I think the government should be getting into the context because the media acts as an intermediary between the people and the government. So if we're going to have the government control the media, then it means we're not going to be getting much of the information that we need. And the government will not be transparent enough. So if we're going to have the media act on its own, it will mean the media will be acting on both sides, the people and the government.
All right, let's get yours and we'll get back to Mashiko.
Just add on what she said, yeah? So it's that thing whereby if the media and the government is actually regulating the media, how would even actually have the government to be accountable for anything? Because let's say in any being in the government office, by means and other facts, don't publish this, we did this, don't do that. You see, how are the people going to know? They won't. So it's better the media is free so that people can have their views from there, get information, say whatever they want, feel like saying, express themselves there.
Right, Machiko.
So yeah, most government-owned media houses are mostly a mouthpiece of the government, more like their propaganda. So I feel like it's not right for the government to oppress private-owned media because they disseminate reliable information as compared to the government-owned ones.
Okay, so this is the more reason why as activists we are actually pushing for the people in the media industry to be fully independent. But when I talked of the government censoring the people in the media industry, this is why we bring in also the aspect of the IPA. So the IPA is actually a board that will just, guide the people in the media industry. Nothing can be run without guidance. So in case of anything, the same journalists are going to be held accountable. So it's very, very important that in as much as we have the IPA, they should be having in-talks with the government on how the media should be running their programs. And also I'll bring in the aspect of political protection. So I concur with each and everyone's point because when we talk of political protection, the media is supposed to be protected from any political interference. Their work should just be their work and not the government trying to advise them or rather trying to make them they should side with the government. So yeah, political interference should not be there.
Away from the bigger picture of what media is, let's focus on this individual that is creating the information and getting the information. Gina Alexander also mentioned one or two things about journalists. What then do we have to put in place to ensure that they do their work perfectly without fear and without persecution at the end of the day?
Okay, so in as much as we have the access to information, the ATI, I feel it's because the ATI can either build or rather cause anarchy. So now people in the media industry, what exactly should be done is that they should make sure that the same reforms that we're actually pushing for, they should be fully put into consideration. That is no political interference, and also I'll bring in the aspect of physical protection, safety protection. So when I talk of safety protection, like I did make mention earlier, I did talk about the investigative journalists. So for the investigative journalists, you find that they have to report and talk about their untold stories. So you find that when they go to a different country, they cover a story that is not supposed to be told to the public, their lives are in danger. So if only those people can be provided with emergency evacuation as well as their communication channels to be secured, so that in as much as they have the right to report, the right to investigate, they are safe because that protection has actually been enforced.
Let me bring in Joshua. Protection of journalists away from fear, violence, and persecution.
Do you want me to speak from experience?
Yes. Go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. So the problem that I've discovered when dealing with, I think, government officers is that they are still doing things the old way. You see, there is that access to information bill that is there, which gives me the powers to go to the mayor's office and say, okay, I would want to look at the budgets and also how the council had spent money maybe 5 years ago. I should be able to be unveiled that document, that report. But when you go there, you find that there is a lot of bureaucrats. They are going to tell you, no, for you to see the mayor, maybe pass through this one, bring a letter. So there is those gaps that are still there. So it is very difficult for a journalist to obtain information that is supposed to be shared to the public. If you are having a show, maybe in 2 days' time, you go to maybe Ministry of Finance and say, we would want somebody to speak to the public on the issues of budget consultation. The person from Kabwe is not going to speak. They wait for approval from somebody from Lusaka, which is not supposed to be the case. And I think we need to start demanding the government to start doing the things the correct way and the right way. If they are telling us to say the media should be able to access the information, I'm sure even background we should be able to see these things happen.
In your preamble, Michelle, you had mentioned, you brought in the aspect of social media and different technologies that include AI in these media spaces. Let's look at the dissemination of information with regards to new technologies and also misinformation in a different aspect.
Okay, so when we look at Meta AI, its advantages is that quite right, in as much as a journalist you can't just, sometimes it's very hard to go in the field and imagine like you're walking, you don't have any money for transport, so you have to go and cover a certain story. But for the introduction of Meta AI, it will be very easy because you just have to research on a particular topic and then you just write down your notes. So that will actually make your work easy. But again, the same algorithms, talking of Meta AI, talking of ChatGPT, they can actually manipulate us as people, because the way as people were created, we are very special and unique in our own way. So now, technology cannot be fully trusted. Sometimes you can manipulate it, sometimes you can manipulate it. So there are certain instances where you can find that in as much as we are trying to, you are researching on a certain topic and you need that information, it might give you some false information, or rather some people might be able to manipulate that Meta AI and just have the information that is not relevant, because that is just like an algorithm, that is just like a computer. So it has got both, it has its advantages and disadvantages.
Can we get a comment from the panel? Machiko, would you like to know?
Like the way you put it, you're talking about later disseminating false information. Like the use of social media. I think every social media platform has a way of verifying everything that's posted on it.
Right, let's get comments from the audience and we'll be able to get back to the panel. Yes, the gentleman.
Okay, thank you very much. Access to information and the press freedom. I don't think you can go to the government officials and tell them to say, I am going to report to you, sir, that you have stolen CTF money. I'm asking for permission. Should I go ahead? They will not allow you. And that is what this monitoring is actually talking about. So I feel for the media to perform its duties, government regulation should not be there. The regulation in itself, it is an abrogation of the freedom of the press. However, there is also an aspect of media propaganda by excessive freedom. Again, there is this very well-known media house that I've been following on Facebook. They are very quick to report that a certain person has been arrested. There is a time that they had reported that a media personnel has been arrested at Charleston police. Immediately, the police released a statement. They apologized for reporting that. 2 days later, they reported that 5 people have been arrested at showgrounds. The police released the report. Immediately, they also apologized. And so I feel, sorry to use this statement, I feel we are quickly running to embrace artificial intelligence without dealing with natural stupidity. And it is affecting us. Because in as much as we are embracing the use of ChatGPT and whatever, we are failing to deal with individual reasoning. Because in as much as there is media freedom, there is also supposed to be an aspect of humanity in it. Because you find that media houses, they report on the same thing, they report the positive. Private media houses, they report on the same thing, they report the negatives. So how do we reach a consensus whereby the media is open, that we get the information that we deserve? It also begins with the media houses themselves. Get the information, have the accurate information as you report to us, so that even us who are getting to be informed, we may not have the access to go to parliament, but we trust in the media. So if the media is reporting media propaganda, and the national press is also reporting media propaganda, we will end up having misinformed citizens.
Right, let's get 2 more comments. We have it from females. The future is female, the future is silent. But let's get 2 more comments and get back to the panel.
Okay, maybe just to borrow some words from the president from Rome. I asked the question, do you have those lines about, for example, if I give you an information or if I misinform you, do you have those lines about the Manchester? Because in most cases, when I meet and more apologize, but the time information you have, but I've never heard about the from the place at so I mean it's about the information. Do you have the other example?
All right, let's get one last comment and we'll be able to get to the panel, so I can just answer those questions. One last comment from the audience. All right, Michelle. I think this question should have been asked twice with regards to having to figure out whether the information given is correct, and also now there's an aspect of punishment if somebody misinforms the media house.
Okay, so before Joshua comes in, there is what we call fact checking. So when the information reaches us, or not from the media, so when the information reaches people from the media, they'll obviously first have to do some fact checking to check if that information which has been availed to them is correct or not, if it's correct information or misinformation. So basically what I've seen and what I've heard is that when I had a few interactions with people from the media industry, they told me to say at first they give warnings, and then when they see that charge, okay, this is too much, depending on the story, then that person has to be cancelled, or rather they have to be told they won't be getting more information from that person because they know to say, so again, talking about what he said to talk about Meta AI and ChatGPT, in short, trust in these algorithms, technology has come here to stay. So my advice is that journalists really have to up their game, because in the near future we'll find that I'm a journalist because everyone wants to be a content creator. Something may happen now, you'll find that different people have different stories. No, it happened around 10 hours. No, it happened around 10:05. No, it happened around 10 something in some seconds. You see, so it's like everyone wants to be a content creator. So in as much as we are also getting information from different people, it's very important that if you have a smartphone, you are supposed to fact check that information if it is true or not. But again, not relying too much on technology.
Alright, let's begin, Joshua.
I think everything that I wanted to say, most of the things she has said. Maybe let us look at this story. How many here shared the picture of Renford Kalaba when it was reported that he has died? Almost all of us here. So we are in this predicament where social media is replacing journalism, which is not supposed to be the case. So misinformation can't be fought by the media, but it can be fought by ourselves. So fact checking. When you hear that maybe a road accident has happened, before maybe you even get to share who has died, I'm sure it is the police who are supposed to confirm to say this accident has happened and 5 people have died or maybe 5 people have been injured. But you find that we are relying so much on bloggers to tell us what is happening, which is not supposed to be the case. So it is a responsibility of a good citizen, before you share information, ensure that it is something that is true. Don't just be too quick to gain likes on social media. That is not what things are supposed to be. Yeah.
Right, comments from the panel? Chico has something to add.
I think the reason why we mostly get unverified information on social media platforms is that news gets to travel faster on social media than compared to other media platforms.
All right, do we have comments, questions, contributions from the audience? Yes, let me start with you. And all right, so let them know hands or allow you to come through as well. Briefly. Yeah, please go ahead.
I also feel like the issue of qualification and certification needs to be talked about. Like when we look at this media houses and whatever is spreading the news, for example, if I give an example of Iran, where they certified, do they have qualified journalists to look into these issues, or do they just get information from, for example, I post something on my account on my Facebook page, they just get that and put it there. Are they qualified? Is there any balance, or is there any right way that people are supposed to be qualified to give this kind of information? Because at this point, it's like you just hire anyone and anyone can I can just go on Facebook and open a media page, and I'll be allowed to spread, and usually just have, it's just about numbers now. If I have many numbers, so I can now just say anything and everybody can say anything. Am I qualified for that? Am I allowed to do that? Is there any regulations that's
Right. And a comment from the audience? Yes. And there was another one right here. We'll start with you and then get to you.
Apologies for talking too much.
Okay.
A few weeks ago, there was a news that had spread that a lot of people are taking screenshots all over the media concerning a student at NRTC that was arrested because they wanted to connect with a demonstration. Now, unfortunately, attached to that, there was a WhatsApp conversation that she was saying, did you talk to your union president? I don't know if people read that thing. Did you talk to your Unfortunately, in that message, the picture attachment that was there of the Peter Roberts was a minister in my cabinet at Kabwe President, our minister of local government. You've seen that? How media propaganda. So I started receiving calls. How come your minister is attached to something? When there was a protest at our school a few months ago. So, like what my sister has actually said, in as much as we are talking about press freedom, the government, instead of coming in to regulate what you post, they should come in to regulate the establishment of the same media houses. Like she has said, create a certain standards to say this should be the only way you should be recognized as a media is if you meet certain requirements. I am aware there is independent broadcasting that is in existence. But I feel in its regulation, it is not very much working on the social media, of which the social media now is the most informing platform that we have. Like in Guma, we rarely listen to the news, but we are always on our phones. And so the first information we get is from the phone. So regulation should be there from the establishment and not what they own.
Thank you so much. Let's get our comment from the gentleman right here.
Okay. Access to information is by let's call that aspect. In that, these are the publication system. Let's call that action.
All right, on that note, let's get back to you, Michelle, to just sum it up, even as we get to say bye to our debate.
Okay, so in as much as we want to trust these algorithms, in as much as we would want to trust the Meta AI, in as much as we would want to trust the ChatGPT, I feel it's very important that putting the fact-checking aside, you as an individual, the moment you want to disseminate the misinformation, think about the next person, because it will not only affect you, but it will also affect another person. So it's very important that you disseminate the correct and full information concerning a particular topic, yes, a particular topic, or rather a problem that has actually arisen. So I feel it's also important that, like I said, you did make mention earlier, that journalists really have to up their game, because in the end, we just find that technology will rule over. So I feel it's also important that, actually, from the point that he said, I don't know if it's an interjection, from the point that he just said, he talked of the government being able to regulate. So when I talked of government being able to regulate this media content, in the first place, everyone says the government is not supposed to regulate the media content. So I feel the government should be having in-talks with the independent broadcasting authority so that they're able to guide the journalists who are carrying out these stories, and also protect these investigative journalists, because they give out the untold stories. Not only will it benefit them, but it also benefits us as individuals.
All right, are we getting a comment from the panel? I want to thank you so much, gentlemen and lady, for being part of today's discussion. We had Machiko Kalonga, who's coming from New Ngungu, from Watch Constituency, Joshua Musoro, who is a young person, an environmental activist and community journalist. Michelle right there, who is a youth activist, and not forgetting Chomba and Stephen, who are also coming from Kabwe. A round of applause for our panel. And lastly, a round of applause for you, the audience, for being very good. Thank you so much. I leave it to Jishimba.
Right. Thank you very much for being part of this Kabwe debate. So basically, the debate was just more about constitutional reforms, and the 5 topics that we discussed were media freedom and executive dominance. Before I even mention them, are we in the same verse? Maybe just 2 people to talk about what they have linked, 1 or 2 things.
Okay. According to the introduction, more than 95% were doing cow. Very Watermere, Kabwe, Central, and Water Constituency. So, they are very Umbea.
Youth representation, aspiring candidates 2026. Yes.
Use your rights. What's now this is wrong, this is right now. Use your rights wisely, otherwise this will be very best. Not all of us are able to access the smartphone, but at least
in the village, light the fire, and in it we build a dream. Every heart, every smile holds the key.
fact-checking. You know, our policies have given us the freedom to post whatever we like, right? But we should change that. Any information, wrong information given to somebody is bad. Not only on your side, but it becomes asking everyone over. Fact-checking is something that should go on ground. I did fact-checking in 2021, right? I went
In the village, light the fire. Hand in hand, we build the dream. Every heart, every smile holds the key to what we see. Tien and Amoti, Amoti Nditumba Lachi Soni and we rise. Together we thrive. In the village, light the fire. Hand in hand, we build the dream. Every heart, every smile holds the key to what we see. Tien and Amoti, Amoti Nditumba Lachi Soni and we rise. Together we thrive. In the village, light the fire. Hand in hand, we build the dream. Every heart, every smile holds the key to what we see. Tien and Amoti, Amoti Nditumba Lachi Soni and we rise. Together we thrive. In the village, light the fire. Hand in hand, we build the dream. Every heart, every smile holds the key to what we see. Tien and Amoti, Amoti Nditumba Lachi Soni and we rise. Together we thrive. In the village, light the fire. Hand in hand, we build the dream. Every heart, every smile holds the key to what we see. Tien and Amoti, Amoti Nditumba Lachi Soni and we rise. Together we thrive. In the village, light the fire. Hand in hand, we build the dream.